Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. Actually, let's do that again. Da 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 da. Oh, da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. Never met me before. Hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And it's really good to have a little bit of a giggle with myself. I'm really grateful for that because in hitting that live button tonight, I wasn't too sure. That's why we had to do the da 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 a second time because I recognized I didn't put the energy in that I knew was in there. I know it's always in there, but sometimes we are so preoccupied by what's not going right, we don't see or even notice what is going right. And that's what happened to me when I came in live tonight. I'm not myself today. I'm losing one of my best friends. I do believe my cat is very, very sick. I may or may not be in tomorrow. I may challenge myself, but that's not what my life is about, is just beating myself down and making myself come to the platform when I'm not feeling good. But being that example, we have to be that example, don't we? That we show up in the difficult times and we take advantage of those moments that we can take a breather. And I am grateful in this moment that I can take a bit of a breather. My cat is laying down in this moment trying to get some sleep. She is not breathing well at all. I know, like, for since I got back from my trip, that she had a little bit of a cold going on. And yeah, it came to a head this morning and it was instant. I instantly recognized, right? I've had enough cats. This is my probably my sixth cat, maybe. That was personally mine. We've always had family cats, but this is the first, about the sixth cat that I've had, and each one of them has been a best friend to me. And it's hard, right? When you have to say goodbye, especially when it was unexpected. But of course, being the person that I am, I'm waiting on miracles, right? I'm waiting on a confirmation that there's a better way to say goodbye. My last couple of cats that I had, I took them to the vet and they suffered by staying at the vet's when they could have passed away at home. And so that's what I'm kind of, right? I'm kind of hoping for, you guys. Sorry. I wanted to show up tonight because, it is being in that example. These are things that we all go through, but we suffer in different degrees depending on our experiences in life. Maybe if you lived on a farm and, right, life and death was your meal on the table, right? It was surviving a winter. And, we have ways of well, explaining to ourselves what's going on, right? In this day and age, and there's so many amazing medical procedures for humans, but we don't think outside of our own physical physical well-being, right? Lots of times we don't think of the pets too often. And that my cat just basically, right, just took care of herself. I've had her now for probably 6 or 7 years, and she was probably about 3 years old when I got her, right? So for myself, even though that might seem like a young age, she was extremely overweight, and I think probably a little bit diabetic too, considering how much water that she drank. But I didn't want to talk about my cat, but I wanted to talk about in that relationship to saying goodbye to loved ones. And then even for our own selves, when we question, if there's something after we pass away, and we do come back, how come we don't remember, right? How come we don't have these experiences that totally, right, like a movie in our minds, remember the amazing people? It's because it is heartbreaking, right? I believe that, Cindy's not coming back, but there are other parts of me I believe that will be coming back, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And I couldn't even imagine thousands of lifetimes. And you have to be disconnected, right? Because if you loved, right? If you loved, can you imagine if you remembered in the next lifetime how painful and how sad that would be? That we, right? It's why we don't it's why we don't remember, because we're getting better, right? Because love is finally coming into the world. It's coming into our relationships, and you might not think so, as how volatile and how mixed up everybody is in their dynamic relationships within their own families. But it's the day and age that we live in, and it's those choices that we made, right? We made those decisions, but we have to be, you know, brave enough to admit that sometimes we don't make such great decisions, that we can do better by ourselves, by doing better by our kids. And if you believe anyway, like I do, that there might be parts of you that are coming back, wouldn't you want them to have an easier time, right? And then to think, right, if we are coming back, why don't we remember, right? Because it would be too painful, because there's so much love and connection, and right, so many emotions wrapped up in that. And you can't imagine that you'd want to think that possibly you mistreated yourself in a past life, right? I believe probably, right, coming from the families that I do, that it's quite possible that I have always mistreated myself from one lifetime to the next. I am treading water now, right? I'm making up for that. I'm doing the very best that I can in the creation of the best human being that I possibly can, in the anticipation of doing that, that I might not fall into the same pitfalls. But I don't think I would want to be tortured, right, by what Cindy created out of her life or didn't create out of her life, right? It's one more life, and I believe that it's being utilized. It might not have earlier, but in this moment, I am, right, trying to make some headway in a possibility that might have been a big fat zero, right? I might not have made any movement for myself in my entire life. And then, right, come back in these same dynamic relationships and still not have the solutions in how to maneuver them, survive them possibly, or to be able to feel them out and recognize the magnificence in the people in our lives that, right, that it would be kind of painful to remember, right? Because we loved too much or we felt too much. Good times and bad times. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, right? And this is what life is like for absolutely everybody. Hello, Kathy. She was a lifesaver to me too, Kathy. But that's what life is all about, isn't it? Right? It's not being awkward. It's not being tough and strong. I can take this. I'll just get me another one. It's actually appreciating the relations in your life. And that's true. And then you remember the good times afterwards. I know, a week or two, and right? It's not that we purposely forget, it's just that we're always moving forward, right? And so you think of the good times. We have the photos on the like lots of photographs and lots of good memories and lots of stories to tell later when I'm feeling better, right? And there's always that opportunity that she could have a turnaround. Like I said, I knew she had a cold, right? And I'm taking the very best care of her as I possibly can. I'm not going to let her eat hard food anymore. I'm going to put her on the soft food now. I even went to the store today and got her some soft food. And she's eating and she's using her box, right? But her breathing is pretty bad. Right? I didn't expect her to last the evening, that's for sure. Yeah. And as long as she's not in pain, as long as she's not in suffering, I'd much rather her be here with me, right? Okay. I've got my cards, you guys. I thought I would just come in and go right into the cards, but being the person that I am, I would feel bad, right? We're supposed to be what's my good cheer. We're always supposed to be happy and stuff, but it is that shadow work. It is about being able to absorb the hits in our lives and the sadnesses in our lives, right? We keep looking for joy and love and excitement and, right, all those things that are positive. But, you know, being able to sit in a sadness, right? That's something special. But what's even more special is when you could sit in somebody else's sadness. So I appreciate that you're still here, Kathy. I appreciate that you're still here. Um and she's evolving too. She's evolving too. And I suspect, the changes that come into our lives, that she'll come into my life again, right? She'll maybe be cat number 7, right? That possibly they were all the same the same traveling partners, right? My entire life I've always had cats. You know, my parents, that was one thing they always made sure, even as a kid, that I had a cat, right? They had a dog. I'm not much of a dog person, but my parents always made sure that I had a cat, or the household at the very least had a cat. Okay, you guys. If I don't show up tomorrow, you know why. I'm not here. I may show up anyway. I felt like, this wasn't all so boohoo and stuff, because it is part of life. And I don't want to think of the positives of this, but there are positives, right? I would trade those positives for a minute in order to keep her around. But at the same time, I understand things move the way that they move. And at the very least, I have to be able to with that. And I'm giving her lots of pets, and going to give her a pet brush. And I took out the wet wipes because she had some problems, and I gave her a good clean. And you know she's not walking far, but she was never a big walker. But she's doing 6 feet in one direction, 6 feet in another. I've got little beds all over the place where she can just plop down if it's too much for her, right? And like I said, you never know. Okay, okay, you guys. But my intuition, I wouldn't feel this way unless, right, unless I really felt it. And that's the thing, that I trust my own emotions that way, right? That's how I knew my sister's operation was going to be just fine. It was just a matter of getting her in, right? Right? But. Okay, so let's just grab a card here, and then I'm just going to spend a little bit more time with my cat. I don't know, right? I'll probably get up a few times tonight to check to see how she's doing. I'm keeping the windows pretty much closed, right? Keep it a little bit warmer. I even turn the heat on. And I got 2 cards here, you guys. So we're going to do both. So the main card that came up was this word gratefulness, right? Gratefulness is the expression of appreciation. Oh my goodness. In acknowledgement of what we have received, right? Of what we have received. Even if we haven't received it yet, right? To be grateful for what we will receive. And I do my gratefuls all the time. Even today, I did tons of gratefuls, tons of gratefuls, and then ride those waves, right? Ride those waves. Gratefulness is a lifesaver. It really is, because if you're grateful, you can see literally the good things that are going on in your life. You can actually see it, and we need to see that evidence in our life. And again, sometimes, like I said, we look at the bad things, we look at the terrible conversations, what's going wrong, you know, what all the bills that are piling up, and we don't look at the amazing, wonderful things that are happening from moment to moment, right? And those are always happening. And sometimes that's what we have to do when we're not feeling good, when we're feeling sad, right? Just dive a little bit into something that will make you feel a little bit better, right? Sometimes it's even a memory. Sometimes it is, right? Memories aren't always painful, that's for sure. Okay, so the second word we don't normally do two words, but I pulled both cards tonight, so let's do it. Integrity is the example that others will follow. Isn't that awesome that I said that, right? It's showing up here. Sometimes we have to be that example for others because they don't know how to act in their own difficulties and in their own frustrations and in their own pain and their grief. I was talking about it yesterday how men are brought up to be tough and unfeeling and not show their emotions and stuff. And, you know, we lose touch with each other. We lose that ability to have those social interactions, right? That feeling of love for each other is so important. And, even if that feeling is with a pet, and if you're anything like me, right, your pet was probably your best friend, right? Whether that was a dog, cat, a gerbil, a guinea pig, right? Right? We all connect differently. And, we have to remember that that is nature. That is nature. And that's evolving. That's evolving too. So I'm not going to be allowing myself to be sad for a long time. I'm going to be probably pretty sad in the moment. It is going to probably be pretty scary. But I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that for her. And I'm going to do that for myself. And that's being the evidence. That's the integrity. Integrity is the example that others will follow, right? If I can do it, you can too. It sounds like a commercial, doesn't it, you guys? Okay, thank you so much for coming into my life, Kathy. You always come in on those days that are just perfectly needed for you to pop in. So I very much appreciate that. Um, uh, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, she's been just as much of a caretaker to me as I have been to her. One, oh, 100%, 100%. Okay, you guys, I'm going now. That's my good cheer. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much. Um, Hope it wasn't too heavy, right? But this is this is life, and this is stuff that we all go through. And sometimes, if you're lucky enough, you don't have to go through it too many times. I'm so grateful that I have my sisters, right? Like in my family on both sides, like people didn't live very long, right? There were lots of health issues and stuff that were going on. And here we are, right? All four of us are almost hitting 60 years old. I have one more sister that's going to be hitting 60, and I think that's coming up next year next year or the year after. And that's so amazing, right? That's always a little bit of movement that's appreciated because it's just the signal, right? We're not done yet. Okay, everybody, have a great night, and we'll see you